Well, hey, everybody. Good morning and happy Thursday. We're getting ready to record episode 91 of Mike in the Midwest, and we're talking about spring break today. Spring break in the Midwest, memories from being a kid and being a teacher. So we will talk about that. Let's do it. Episode 91 coming at you here on YouTube. You're listening to Mike in the Midwest, an exclusive mini podcast for the patrons of the Be Our Guest podcast. Sit back and relax as Mike shares his stories of growing up here in the Midwest. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Happy Thursday. We're recording this show here live from the Be Our Guest podcast studios in lovely St. Peters, Missouri, on Thursday, March 24th, 2022, and hope you are doing well. Hope you're having a nice week. It is spring break here in our school district and for my wife's school district as well, and that is going to be the topic of conversation a bit later on in the show. It's going to be our main topic of conversation, but of course, we go over what is happening in my world at the top of the show. And then we hit your feedback from the previous week's show, and then we jump into today's topic. But we always kind of talk about how things are going here to lead off the show. And I'll tell you what, I was raving about the weather a couple of weeks ago, how it was almost summer, how I was getting ready to think about pulling the doors off my Jeep and taking the top down. It was so nice. And yeah, that was what we call in the Midwest fake spring. Right now, it is 39 degrees and drizzling outside. And that is something we'll talk about again with our main topic today, but it happens every time in St. Louis that when it is your spring break, and again, different districts in our metropolitan area do have spring breaks different weeks. I think this week, though, is the predominant week for most school districts in St. Louis. I think if you had to pick which week most school districts have off for spring break, it is this week currently that we're in, if I had to guess. Most of them pick this week. But it seems that whenever that week is in St. Louis, that's the week where you get the crummiest weather. And I will say Monday was beautiful. Monday was almost 80 degrees, sunny. And then a rain front came through. It's been raining Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's supposed to be sunny again tomorrow, but it's only supposed to be 60 and then the 50s, but sunny on the weekend. So it's going to get better. But it just seems like this happened when we were kids. It happened when we were teachers, that when you had that week of spring break, whether it was in March or whether it was in April, you just didn't get the good weather like you dreamed about it in January and February. You would lay down the best plans. You would say, okay, we're going to have this week off for spring break come March, come April. And it's probably going to be 65. It's probably going to be 70. It's probably going to be sunny. We can do X, Y, and Z. No kidding. That's when you'll get that last hurrah of winter. That is always when a cold snap comes through. You get really cold rain. You may even get snow. We'll talk about a story where we got snow over spring break here in just a minute. It's crazy. So right now, like I said, 39 degrees, drizzly right outside the windows of the podcast studios. So I am glad to be sitting here in the studio podcasting with you, recording an episode of Mike in the Midwest. I hope you're enjoying this, listening to it, and I hope it is warmer wherever you are tuned in. If you're lucky enough to be down in the South, I hope you're having some nice weather. If you're up north of me, I hope that summer finds you sooner rather than later, because I don't think any of us really enjoy the cold weather, at least at this point of the year, right? I think we get a little novelty, like, come October, November, it's like, oh, I can't wait to bust out the hoodies and, make a fire in the fire pit and all that kind of stuff. We get all excited for that, but yeah, I'm over it, right? It's March. So it's shorts and t-shirts and flip-flops and all that stuff. It's one of those things. Pete here watching live on Facebook or on YouTube as I'm recording. Perfect comment. Pete Swisher says, March is brutal and hopeful at the same time in Iowa. That is exactly true. That is exactly true, right? Right now, it is brutal out there because we've had 85-degree days already here in St. Louis. Like, it was just like shorts and t-shirts. I'm not kidding. I was so close to pulling the doors off the Jeep, which is a major job. Those things are super heavy. But now it's so cold again. So it's brutal right now. But it was so hopeful. There is not a truer statement, Pete. That is so true. I love when people jump in live while I'm recording. That makes me happy. So anyway, I hope you are doing well. Hope you're having better weather than I am. But the good news is, here's the good news. When you're in March and you're in spring, which we've officially now made it to spring, so we are out of winter. We can all say we survived winter. So another winter is behind us. And I think that's all a good thing. That these cold snaps don't last long. You might have a couple of days and then, the corner turns more quickly. So that's good. One other thing I want to talk about here at the top of the show, I didn't want to do a whole podcast about this. It's a mini podcast anyhow. This whole daylight savings time debate, right? Which I don't think, the last time I heard, it's not going to go anywhere. I know that the Senate passed a resolution to keep the United States, the whole country, to keep the United States in daylight savings time permanently. The House has to also pass this, and I've heard the House is not going to, so it will not go to the president. So it's kind of a dead deal, which is good. That is, for me, I really don't talk politics, but I'm jumping in on this hot button issue. I don't want them messing with the daylight savings time. And here's why. I know that a lot of people hate the time change. I understand this. Kind of. Okay. Cause I want it. I like the change. And here's why I like the change. I never hear people taking up this side of the argument because a lot of people say, oh, I hate in the spring when we spring forward and I lose my hour of sleep and I'm so tired, that next day, and it takes me a week to adjust. And kids, it takes, when you got to go to school and the kids are all off their schedules. And I get that. I was a teacher. I dealt with not just your kids, I dealt with 25 kids. I mean, and I did that for 17 years. My wife is like in her 23rd year. She's dealing with them all the time too. I get it. We dealt with a lot of kids with a lot of time changes. But here's the thing. Let me just give it to you from my point of view. Here's why I like the time change. For one thing, if you know me, and if you're a patron, you probably know me pretty well, because not only, I think this is the beauty of podcasting too. Not only do we talk about Disney on the Be Our Guest podcast, and I think good podcasts do this, that the hosts also kind of talk about themselves without talking about themselves directly. Like, about my family. That Paige is my oldest daughter. She's at Mizzou. She's with the basketball team. That Mallory's a cheerleader. She's 14. We started the podcast when she was 2 months old. We're heading down to Walt Disney World for Summit. That's at the end of April, and all that kind of stuff. You know that stuff. We don't do whole shows on that, but that's kind of an aside. About how crazy Ricky is with Brian. They go on all these side trips down in Atlanta. About Hannah and Steve with Pam. About our families. About our likes and our dislikes. So you probably know with me, I'm kind of traditional, and like, I love, like, you'll catch me watching old TV shows during the day, and I'll watch the same old TV shows over and over. Like, during the day, I watch Blue Bloods all the time. I just think it's an interesting show. I like the dynamics of that family. I've never been to New York City. That's my taste of it. If I get in the New York City Marathon, I feel like I know what I'm doing because I've seen that show, maybe. I don't know. But here's the thing. With daylight savings time, it's been a part of my life, my whole life. And here's the other thing. The time change to me, and I've never heard anybody bring this up, and maybe my life is just so extremely boring that nobody else has to even think about this, and give me some feedback. I love your feedback, and we'll get to your feedback here in a second about last week's show. I honestly do want to hear feedback on this topic, because I feel like I'm the only person in the world that feels this way, because I've never heard another person on Twitter bring this up. I like having something to look forward to twice a year during kind of two really boring times of the year. I love looking forward to holidays. I'm a holiday person. I love looking forward to like Halloween. I love Thanksgiving. I love looking forward to Thanksgiving for a couple of, 3-4 weeks before the holiday. I love Christmas. I look forward to that for months. I even I look forward to Easter. I look forward to the 4th of July. I look forward to certain benchmark days of the year, because I think that points it's like something in life to get you excited for like the next thing to look forward to. And I think that's what's good about an aside is like Run Disney races. It gives you another benchmark. Like right now, this time next week, I'll be getting ready to go down to Walt Disney World to run in the spring surprise races. Okay, so it gives me something to look forward to here in the middle of April. Not a whole lot going on, or the end of March. Not a whole lot going on right now. So that gives me something to look forward to. Here's why I like leaving everything alone with the time changes. 2 times a year, 2 nights a year, 2 mornings, however you look at it when you change the time, it gives you something to look forward to. In the fall, when you're kind of like it's getting, things are getting colder, it's getting darker, everybody's going back to school and people are kind of getting grumpy. That one night, you get a bonus hour of sleep. You get an extra hour. You get like a 25-hour day. That's pretty sweet. That's pretty cool. So sometime like in November, you're going to get a bonus hour of sleep. That's cool. Don't take that away from me. I like that bonus night, one night a year in the fall. That's pretty cool. Now you lose an hour in the spring. I get that. Okay. You do lose that. However, as a kid, I always loved that day when we sprang forward. And I know you're kind of tired, but you know what? You're 1 hour of sleep that can happen because you go to a great concert or you go to a great party or you do something where you stay out an extra hour where you shouldn't. That could happen anyway. You could not get that extra hour of sleep by 100 other reasons. But the thing is, as a kid, I remember our neighborhood, again, getting back to my childhood and Mike in the Midwest, the Sunday that we had that time change, if we had good weather that day, it seemed like our neighborhood had so much energy that night because all of a sudden, instead of it being dark at like 6 o'clock, it wasn't dark until 7 o'clock, or usually like 6:30. So it'd be like 7:30 on that Sunday night. Every kid would still be out riding their bikes, or we're out playing in shooting baskets in somebody's backyard, or riding up to the elementary school and playing on the playground. It was like you got a second jolt of energy, and it kind of really showed that, okay, we're in the spring now, and we're pushing now towards summer, which is a kid. I don't know if kids are still like this today, but God, I look forward to summer break so hard as a kid when I was in elementary school because we played outside all day when I was a kid. We rode bikes, we played kickball, we played soccer in the backyard. We went to the elementary, we went swimming. We played hard all day, every day as a kid, and I looked forward to it. Not that I didn't like school, but I would have rather been outside playing with my buddies in the neighborhood. So that time change day was like a special day. And maybe it was just because like we didn't go on vacations. We didn't do a whole lot of exciting stuff in my childhood, or we didn't do a lot of cool stuff. But we did look forward to the time change day because you got all of a sudden, not only that Sunday night you stayed out late, but then after school on that first, that next day when you got home from school, boom, you had an extra hour to play. And then you had that extra hour to play for the rest of the school year. Now you could say you would get that all the time, but again, it's going to be dark in the morning until like 8 o'clock in the morning here in the Midwest in January. That's going to be a mess. So anyway, just my little thing. Leave the time zones, leave the daylight savings time alone. I like how it is. It gives me something to look forward to in the fall, bonus hour sleep. Gives me something to look forward to in the spring. I get to look forward to, hey, it's going to be light out longer tonight. I like that. I like something to look forward to, some kind of change. So let me know what you think though, because maybe you want to keep it. It seems like everybody wants to just leave it alone. I know some people don't like changing their clocks. There's very few clocks. I mean, our power actually somehow yesterday went out for like an hour and a half yesterday morning for no reason. I don't know why. It was windy the day before here. It was super windy. Yesterday it was just kind of drizzly and cold. I'm working at the kitchen table. All of a sudden, all the power goes out in our house and was out for like an hour. So I'm working off my laptop and tethered it to my cell phone. And power comes back on like an hour later, and the stove has got, we don't have a smart stove or anything, so it's like flashing, the microwave's flashing. I know I had to go around and set those clocks, but most clocks for the most part set themselves now, so you don't have to worry about like setting a million clocks like you used to with VCRs and stuff like that. So I don't know. So give me your thoughts. Like, do you really want to stay on standard time or daylight savings time, or can you join my party? Can you join my movement? The leave it alone. Let's just leave it where it is and have 2 days to look forward to something party. I mean, if we want to get behind something, let's get behind that. Anyway, let's hit the feedback from last week. Again, I appreciate your comments. Always drop by patreon.com/Be Our Guest podcast. I hope you guys enjoy this. Just my ramblings. And I have no idea what I'm talking about. But that's how my brain works. So there you go. A little insight into my brain. Last week, we talked about pizza places in St. Louis because we had gone up to Schaumburg, Illinois, and had some pretty good Chicago style pizza at Giordano's Pizza, deep dish, really good pizza. We've also had Gino's East up there when I ran the Chicago Marathon. That was excellent pizza. But I talked about some of the pizza places we have here in St. Louis. I talked about a place called Peroni's. That's one of our favorites. Emo's is kind of the most famous St. Louis, I would say, franchise. Is called the Square Beyond Compare, flat style, bar style pizza. We have Happy Joe's, so we talked about that. But some folks jumped in, and I love your comments. So always drop by patreon.com, leave feedback. That is the heart of the show. I love it so much. So Jody Binning jumps in. Jody, hey, how's it going? She says, cannot wait to hear more about the podcast cruise. Yes. Okay, so here, let me give you, before we do this, let me give a little bit more information on this. That I talked to Pam, and we are looking to make an announcement about a podcast cruise. We're looking for summer of 2023, and those cruises should be announced here very soon. So as soon as those are announced, we're going to huddle up for a few days, find a sailing that works for the most of us, and then make an announcement. And hopefully you guys can join us, and we'll do the best we can for the most people that we can. So yes, we are going to do a podcast cruise. Summer of 2023 is what it's looking like, so that because we like families to be able to sail. I mean, that's kind of, we always try to make our podcast very family friendly. And we know that our demographic, while it's not just families, but we always want to be always family friendly. And so we want to do it over the summer when kids are out of school. I know that it's not the cheapest time to sail, but it's also the best time for families. And also we have a lot of teachers, including my wife, that listen to the show. And so that gives them the opportunity to sail with us too. Anyway, Jody says she's thankful that baseball is back, even though her Reds have traded everyone and they're going to stink. That's right. I was watching the Reds actually last night on spring training. I think they were playing who are they playing? The Brewers. And yeah, they don't have many names left, but that's fine with me because they're in our division. So I know that's pretty tough though. They did get rid of a lot of players, but hey, baseball's back. Jody also says, also note to self, do not listen to episode about pizza when you're hungry. My first job was at a local pizza chain called La Rosa's. I loved it and still enjoy going back, but honestly, I love just about any and all pizza. You and me both, Jody. You and me both. That's the one thing is I've heard a lot of people that have worked at pizza places growing up, like when they're, teenagers, like that seems to be like a famous place to have your first job. I've never worked at a pizza place. I worked at a Chick-fil-A once for 3 weeks at the mall. And I said, you know what? This is way too hard. I worked there during Christmas, and while I liked it, and it was a great place to work. I made more money. They were going to pay college tuition if you worked X amount of hours over a certain length of time. I thought that was great. They were closed on Sundays, which was great because we went to church on Sundays. And that way I could do other things on Sundays. That worked out well. But I think I've talked about this many times. I ran a skating rink. I worked at a skating rink, roller skating rink, and I decided to leave the skating rink to work at Chick-fil-A to make like a quarter of an hour more. And at the skating rink, basically what I did was I played music and drank Pepsis and didn't do much else. And so for 25 cents an hour more, when I went to Chick-fil-A, I worked so hard because this was in probably 1991 or 1992, and our mall was hopping, and it was the Chick-fil-A, like in the mall, like everybody in this very popular mall all came to Chick-fil-A, and it was like in November, December during that Christmas rush. And the people were like 50 people deep at every register, and it was just insane. It was crazy. Like it was just madness. You guys have probably seen Chick-fil-A's. They're crazy. And it was just insanity, like how crazy and fast you had to work. And it was just, I was like, after about 3 weeks, it wasn't that it was a bad place to work. I was like, I can just go sit down and drink sodas and I'll give up that quarter an hour. When you're 17, or 18, you just don't care. So that's what I did. Anyway, back to the feedback on St. Louis pizza. Len Wilcox, my good buddy out in Maryland. Hey, well, Len, hope you're doing well. He says the pizza joint I remember the most growing up was called the Roaring Twenties. It featured a Wurlitzer pipe organ surrounding the dining room. It would be played periodically during your meal. I think the walls were set up to hide the components until the show. When the pipes were revealed and the sound started pouring out of the building-sized organ, it was impressive. This was in a town about 5 miles east of Michigan State called Okemos. Wonder if Scotty G ever visited. You know what? Let me give you a little background here. That is where Scotty G's daughter goes to school. Okemos, because I know that because that's what she has on her stuff. I think that's how you say it. But yeah, that's he knows that very well because every time I see him at his daughter's school on Find My Friends, he's in Okemos or Okemos. I don't know how you exactly say it. But yeah, that's I know that well because yes, I believe that is where they go. But man, how about I wonder if that's still there. So after that, Scotty G, the Roaring Twenties with a Wurlitzer pipe organ. I mean, I thought Happy Joe's and Showbiz Pizza were fun. Holy smokes. That's nuts. This is why I love this show because how diverse is our country? Because the thing is, like, if I have no idea this happened up in Michigan. I mean, a Roaring Twenties pizza joint with a Wurlitzer pipe organ. Not a clue that this place ever existed. So if I ever go to Scott's, I got to hear about this. All right, Trisha Hellwig is here. Thanks, Trisha. Hope you're doing well. I believe she's up in Wisconsin, kind of up by the mitten. I grew up on a Discovery Zone pizza, which was Chuck E. Cheese on steroids. Okay, I think I remember Discovery Zone. I think we took Paige or Mallory there. I think it was like a if I recover. Let's see if I recall. Oh wait, okay. She goes on. Okay, let me go on because I think I did go to one of these places. She says, although it didn't have animatronics, it did have a 4-story indoor play structure. It also had an arcade, and I remember playing Hungry Hippos with my cousins until we had blisters form on our fingers. As an adult, our local pizza place is Falbo Brothers. They make the best bacon mac and cheese pizza. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I think I remember Discovery Zone. Here's how I describe this place. If I think of if this is the place that I recall. Let me think. In the 80s at Pass Pets at the pet store at the mall. One of the things that every kid had to have, at least like in my circle when I was a kid, when I was probably like 8 or 9 or 10, everybody wanted a pet hamster. And everybody that had a pet hamster, if you could either put them like in an aquarium, or if you were like a rich kid, you got this thing called a Habitrail. Do you guys remember I'm talking about a Habitrail? So what it was a cage that was kind of like a modified aquarium, but it had like tubes where like a tube would take them to like a running wheel, or it had this tube that would go straight up into like a little skybox that he could sit in up top, he or she. And then what if you were really fancy and like really rich, you could have a tube go into a second like aquarium, so it could go between two aquariums and do all kinds of stuff, and you could connect these things and make it a whole big complex. So anyway, this Habitrail that was connected by tubes. So I thought if this is the Discovery Zone kind of place, I'm thinking this it looked like a Habitrail for kids. I remember because I think we took Mallory or Paige to one of these places. I think it was Mallory, but it was actually built right where we live now. But we came way out here back then because we didn't live out here. Anyway, she says on a more personal note, we put an offer on a house that was accepted. We closed right after getting back from our spring break trip to Walt Disney World. I think it'll be the only time we'll be looking forward to going home after a Disney trip. Well, congratulations, Trisha and family. You know what? We did the same thing. This house that we're living in right now, we actually did we closed out on this on a Disney cruise. We were working with our agent on a Disney cruise, and I believe Scotty G did the same on one of his cruises. I remember on the cruise ship, he was going back and forth with an agent. So yes, good things happen like that. So congratulations and thanks for the feedback, Trisha. We appreciate that. Dennis Keithley, my good friend who's a blues fan down in Texas, he says, I remember a lot of trips and birthday parties at Showbiz Pizza. The franchise we visited had a wall of skee ball machines that separated the arcade from the dining area. I remember one trip, the pole position racing game had a broken coin slot, and one of my tokens awarded me over 24 games. That is a kid's dream. They also had the sit down version of the Star Wars arcade game where you attack the Death Star. That was a favorite of mine. Okay, stop, because Dennis is a famous Star Wars podcaster. Now we know where it all started. And let me just say this, because Dennis did some time here in St. Louis. I remember at Jamestown Mall, Dennis might have gone to Jamestown Mall, I'm not sure, but at Jamestown Mall, one of the anchor stores was the Sears. And in the Sears, they had an arcade, and I don't even know if they had a full-on arcade. And maybe I'm making this up. This is a kid memory that could be wrong. But I recall that in the Sears at Jamestown Mall, somewhere in the back, they had a few arcade games. And one of them was a sit down Star Wars arcade game. And I remember playing that thing and just like, this is the craziest, awesome arcade game of all time. I thought I was Luke. I was Red 5, and I could not get enough of that. Because remember, that video game talked to you. This is Red 5. I'm going in. Yahoo, kid. Oh, that is one of the greatest arcade games and cabinets ever, by the way. So, Dennis, thanks for bringing back the memory. Dennis goes on. One of the things I missed the most after leaving St. Louis was Emo's Pizza and toasted ravioli. St. Louis style pizza and T-Ravs aren't that common in the Dallas area. However, a few years ago, we discovered a nearby pizza place called Fifth Street. They are a St. Louis themed restaurant that specializes in square cut St. Louis style pizza, and they have toasted ravioli. If you're from St. Louis, you can place a pin with your name on it in the map of the greater St. Louis area. It just so happens the day I listened to this, Wednesday is pizza night at our house. So you were right. That is where we're having our dinner. Hey, you got to, Dennis, put a pin on there for St. Peter. Actually, Weldon Spring is kind of where we are. We're right at the corner of 94, 364 in Mid Rivers. We're right. If you can find Whitmore Country Club, we're right next to it. We're not in the country club. Don't get me wrong. We're right by the right there by 94 and 364 intersection. So put a pin there for us. Thanks, Dennis. And I'll have to get down there and try that out. All right, final piece of feedback today is from my good friend Wade up in Nebraska. He says pizza, the universal food, whether you're on the West or East Coast or from the Midwest. Growing up in Nebraska, it's all about Valentino's, owned by the same family for years. They had a restaurant back in the day called Tony and Luigi's and one pizza restaurant called Valentino's. They expanded around Nebraska, but are mainly in Lincoln. In college, they had a buffet that for something like $10 on Sunday nights, it was all you can eat. They expanded to every night, but it has since gone away. Now it's a lot of takeout and delivery, but also sit down locations. But the real kicker is you can buy slices at Memorial Stadium at Husker games. They even have hawkers selling it at the stadium. It's good pizza with a sweet sauce. We also had Chuck E. Cheese, and my boys had many birthday parties there. And full disclosure, before I knew my kids loved it, I had my 40th birthday party there. Not the worst pizza in the world. This is why I love Wade. You should have invited me to your party. That would have been epic. Now I order Lou Malnada's from Chicago. You have to try it. I do follow them on Twitter, by the way, now. Seriously, might be the best anywhere. My second favorite pizza place is in Maui called South Shore Tiki Lounge. And yes, they will put pineapple on their pies. So good. And truth be told, had a Lou's Malnati's sausage last night. Who doesn't like pizza? Thanks, Wade. We got to share a pizza while we're down there next time. That sounds really good. And we'll have to have one in Maui someday. That'd be a dream. So thanks for all the feedback. And maybe we'll even have one at a Husker game someday. That sounds great. If you want to send some feedback, and I love your feedback, guys, it expands my world, and I hope it does for everybody else. Just send that to patreon.com/Be Our Guest Podcast. Drop on by the website. All right, today we're going to hit a few minutes at the end here and talk about spring break memories. So here's the funny thing. I hope that as a kid that you also got a spring break at your school, because this was kind of the thing that got you to summer, right? You had the beginning of the school year, and then you had, you were looking forward to September. You had a long stretch there. Maybe you were looking forward to Halloween, but you didn't really get a break there until Christmas. So you had a really long stretch, but it was the beginning of the year. Everybody's excited, so forth. I'm looking at it from a kid's perspective. But here where we live now, it's really interesting because in our district, which none of the other St. Louis districts have this really, in St. Louis, they have a fall break. Here in Francis Howell, where I live, they get off for a week in the fall, which none of the nearby districts get. which is kind of lucky for them. But we never got that. So, you go back, you go to Christmas break, and then you get that 2 weeks off at Christmas, and then you haul it until spring break. Now, spring break memories for me. So I went to basically elementary school at a private Christian school, which only had one of each grade, and I only had about 25 kids, and I had the same kids in my class every year. So spring break, and the thing was, we didn't travel when I was a kid. We never went anywhere. Six Flags was really a big vacation for us, but Six Flags when I was a kid really wasn't open at spring break. Now nowadays, Six Flags in St. Louis is open over spring break. Obviously, it's an opportunity for revenue. The kids need something to do. Everything opens up over the spring break week. They kind of look at the calendar, I think, and decide this is when most school districts are off and they open up. Also, we did this when I ran the skating rink. We look and see, okay, when are the surrounding school districts mostly on spring break? Okay, we'll be open all week, every day from like 1 to 4, because basically the parents needed babysitting. So they would give their kids, $10, drop them at the skating rink. They could skate for a few hours and we'd watch them. They would be entertained. The parents are happy and revenue source, right? Because our rink would sit empty normally on a Monday through Friday in the afternoon during the week, but spring break was an opportunity to open the doors and earn some revenue. But anyway, back as a kid, you know, for me, we didn't really have any big plans for spring break. Now, like I said, it seemed like the weather was always really cruddy over spring break for some reason, and I don't know why. We usually didn't get great weather, but the thing was, I played a lot of baseball, with for the Corey League, and when I got older, I played a lot of Legion ball and high school ball. But baseball had usually started by the time that spring break was around. So baseball and spring break really go hand in hand for me, because either I was working with one of my friends, my good friend Steve, who was my catcher later in like fifth, sixth, seventh grade. But before that, I mean, I just remember like in spring break, we were playing a lot of wiffle ball. We rode a lot of bikes. But the thing was, it seemed like it was always 50-50 on the weather here in St. Louis. Like some days we were like in shorts and t-shirts and just like having a great time. Like it was almost summer vacation. But then I do remember that a lot of days we're riding our bikes with stocking caps and gloves and like full on coats. So it's kind of interesting how that worked out, that it was always, you always think about spring break and like people sitting on the beach. But for us, spring break was kind of a combination of like 50% Christmas break, 50% summer break. It didn't ever kind of seem to be like comfortable weather. It was either like hot or cold. And it still is like, I mean, just like today, it's 39 degrees, so it's cold, but it could have been hot. So you never know. So some of the memories that I have of spring break, just a couple of stories real quick. One year over spring break, I remember, and the funny thing is that we never had baseball games over spring break, and that bugged me because the reason was the Corey League decided that they were not going to schedule games the week of spring break because too many families went on vacation. And so what would happen is there would be too many forfeits and stuff because a lot of teams wouldn't have their full roster. So I always got mad because we never went on vacation and I loved baseball. Like I could have played a doubleheader every night. I still would if I could. And the thing was, so we got the neighborhood kids together many times and we would just go up to Wee Hop, our home baseball field, and kind of play pickup ball. It's like Sandlot. But I do remember one year I got chicken pox right at the beginning of spring break. I think this was like fifth grade. And it was a bummer because the thing was, I wasn't supposed to be doing anything, but guess who played baseball every day, pick up baseball with chicken pox? Yep, that was me. Because the thing was, like, you're supposed back then, this would have been like in oh, like the late 80s. It was more like I don't see kids like when they get sick, like staying in bed, like leave it to Beaver days anymore. Maybe they do. I don't know. Like when my daughter gets sick, she still goes and does stuff for the most part. Like, back then, it seemed like when you got sick, you had to, like, stay home and stay in bed, and, like, they took your temperature and you ate chicken soup and stuff. The thing was, I just wanted to still play, and I had all the, like, spots and the chicken pox and stuff on me, but, I mean, I still got out there and played ball and, and had a good time, but I remember it was such a bummer because, it just you couldn't do as much as you wanted to do. So I just remember chicken pox happened right at the beginning of spring break, I think like in fifth grade. But the thing I was more bummed about was that again, it was spring break and we couldn't play ball because Corey League didn't schedule us because everybody goes on vacation. I hated that. I hated that. because we never went on vacation. Let's play ball. Let's play a doubleheader every day. We don't have school. But they didn't see it that way because some people actually did go out of town for spring break. Okay, so let me talk to you about because we're running a little long, but I want to get your spring break stories to share next week. That's kind of more important. But as a teacher, let me kind of get to it that way. Because I mentioned if you looked at the show notes, the little briefing, is that teachers kind of have a love/hate relationship with spring break. And let me explain that to you. And maybe the teachers will say I'm crazy. Maybe the teachers will agree that are out in the audience. So obviously teachers love spring break, right? You are working super hard and you are in the grindiest grind of the school year by March or April when spring break comes around for you. You are wore out. I mean, because you've come back and you've made it through January and February, and those are the hardest months of the year. No kidding. Because there's not a whole lot going on. And the kids are hard to motivate at that point. You're getting into the hardest concepts of the year. Your behavior problems in your class every year are the hardest in the wintertime when you're not going out for recess. I mean, there's 1,000 reasons I could get into about why January, February, March are the hardest months of the year to teach. They're hard. And you're wore out as a teacher. So you are definitely looking forward to spring break. Teachers that I know, because I see them on Facebook because I'm still friends with tons of my teacher friends. I mean, they're like bolting on that, Thursday, Friday when spring break starts. I mean, they're heading to Pensacola, they're heading to Destin, they're getting on a cruise. They're out of here. And so teachers love spring break. They want to get to some sun and some fun and some drinks. I get it. Now, here's the other thing, though, that teachers have to think about. For us as teachers, well, at least this is how I thought about it, was that when you got to spring break, well, here's the other thing that was good about it was that you knew you were almost a summer. You knew that you were almost a summer. If you made it to spring break, you could make it to the end of the year. But spring break meant that standardized testing in our state, it was called MAP testing, MAP, and it wasn't a geography test. MAP stood for Missouri Assessment Program. So it was basically our state's assessment program, whatever you had in your state. I'm sure there's a standardized state test for your state. Ours was the MAP. And so you knew that it was getting serious. So you had to really buckle down and get ready. And, I never worried about the MAP test because it was what it was. And if you did your job from September to April, you didn't have to worry about giving the MAP test, at the end of April for a couple of weeks. I actually enjoyed giving the MAP test because you never gave homework during those 2 weeks. So guess what? You didn't have anything to grade. It was awesome. And my kids always did well. And the thing was, too, when we had MAP testing as a teacher, we kind of got the kids amped up. And that's one of the things I liked one of my favorite parts of being a teacher. And again, I taught sixth grade for the most part, and I taught gifted, is that I liked kind of the coaching slash the cheerleading aspect of teaching. I liked being a motivator for my kids. Maybe I wasn't the best like teacher to my kids. I hope I was, but I always was encouraging my kids. I was telling my kids that they can do it. I wanted them to believe in themselves. I wanted them to know that they were as good as anybody else out there. It didn't matter if we were in this poor school district, they could do what everybody else could do if they put their mind to it and they were willing to work and they put in the work. And the thing was, like, during this, all of a sudden, and I hated that our district waited until spring, like testing week, that we did this stuff, but we do like a door decorating contest. And so we decorate our doors with a theme and we would put testing tips on the door. And like, I remember one year Survivor was really new, the TV show Survivor. And so we did our door to the theme of Survivor and like, we're going to survive the MAP test. And we put all these tips of, make sure you read all the 4 options before you select one. And, look for keywords in the question and, make sure you eliminate obvious wrong answers, like all these things. And we really like, we helped each other. We said, okay, we're going to all do great on this test, but how are we going to encourage each other how are we going to get these tests together? And the thing was, that was fun for me because it was almost like being a coach instead of a teacher. And so for that was always happening around spring break because as soon as you came back from spring break, that was typically when the state testing happened. And so a lot of teachers would freak out about this because, you did get judged on your state testing when the scores came back and they didn't come back till the next year. But, you would get judged because your scores would be judged to the 4 other teachers in your grade level, then your school was judged to the other 7 or 8 schools in the district at your grade level and stuff. But if you did your job and you did the best you could, you did the best you could. And kids are different in different areas, in different schools, and, from one year to the next, you could teach exactly the same way. One class can do awesome, one class can do terrible. I mean, it doesn't mean you're a bad teacher or great teacher, it's just the kids, but the thing was just give your best effort. But I loved it because it was always like this was coaching, this was encouraging, this was motivating, and I love that. And I also loved they didn't have to grade because I was never a fan of grading anything. So some teachers hated spring break because it like brought up the stress level. Oh my God, testing's going to be here when we get back. They couldn't. I think honestly, I think some teachers had a hard time enjoying spring break because they knew testing was coming when they came back. I love spring break. We really didn't go many places on spring break. I do remember one final story because we are going super long on what's supposed to be a mini podcast. It's actually probably longer than this week's. We did take a cruise one year to this was when Mallory was I'll have to post a picture somewhere. Mallory was probably 4 or 5. We decided, Pam and I, this was still when I was teaching. This was one of those years like we're getting out of here. So over spring break, we took a cruise on the Disney Wonder to Mexico. And Paige was going to go with us, right? Paige was in high school at the time. And so we're like, yeah, we're going to go. It's like a 5-night cruise because you only get a week off. So it was like a 5-night cruise to Western Caribbean. We're going to Cozumel, a couple other places on the Wonder. I think we went to Grand Cayman. And, it's like in March. We'd never gone except for the summer. And so we drove to Miami because it's before I flew. And we get on the ship. But the thing was, we wanted Paige to go, but Paige was playing high school soccer at the time. And the thing was, she's like, I'm not going to go because I don't want to miss any soccer games. Does that sound familiar? She was just like me. She didn't want to miss her sporting event. I was like, oh my God, we are kindred spirits. I would have said the same thing when I was Paige's age. So she wasn't going to go because she didn't want to miss any soccer games. So we're like, fine, okay, you can stay with your friends. She stayed home with her friends so she could not miss her soccer games, which I was proud of her for that. I felt that. Guess what happened? We had a huge snowstorm back here in St. Louis. All the soccer tournament got canceled. We're chilling on a beach in Cozumel at this paradise beach with this little resort that you could pay $20 and use their pool and get this great Mexican food. And she's sitting at home in St. Louis and everything's canceled because of snow. So that's what I'm talking about. It's a crapshoot in St. Louis with the weather over spring break. So anyway, those are and we had a great cruise. So those are just some of the spring break memories that I had, both from a teacher and a kid perspective. But I would love to hear, like, what was your most epic spring break? Because I've never really had an epic spring break. That was probably the most epic. But what have you done over spring break, and what's your relationship with spring break, and where do you fall on the daylight savings time debate? Let me know. So drop by patreon.com/Be Our Guest podcast, and we'll share that next week. But until we get together again, I went way too long, but I love spending time with you guys. Thank you so much for your support. Stay safe, stay healthy. Big announcement coming on the Be Our Guest podcast next week, and we'll see you real soon.